afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another one of our Zoom side chats. This is Michael Campanovo, and we are joined today by UTK Geography Alum Michael Hazelton. And I got to know Michael because he was finishing up right about the time that I got hired. And I think Michael was president of the undergraduate club geography that first year. And I have a very fond memory of Michael being the one that gave me my teaching award that year. So I really appreciate that and the work you did with club geography. And Michael's actually joining us from out in California today. And as I mentioned in the material that went out to promote the event, that Michael does work with Apple Maps, and we're going to talk a little bit about how he made his transition from being a student into the contractor world and then actually working with Apple directly. So let's get to Adam's question, but let's talk about a couple of things first. So Adam, we're not going to ignore your question, I promise. All right. So Michael, in the pictures that went around earlier, there's a picture of you at Oak Ridge in the geospatial team. I was doing a training today with the AmeriCorps members, and Natalie mentioned that you had worked for Kathy Olson at one point with Public Works. What are some of the things that you were involved with as an undergrad here in the department in terms of internships, work study, undergraduate research, that sort of thing?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, as you saw, I got to do an internship at Oak Ridge in the summer between kind of semesters. That was like largely just because I noticed like a lot of other geography department people getting internships there. So I was like, wow, that's cool. I'd love to jump on board for that. And so, you know, I knew like Hannah Gunderman was kind of like really helpful in like organizing that kind of thing. So I like spoke to her a little bit about it. And then like Brooke Pearson and Hudson Kelly had all sort of also been getting involved in that sort of thing. So I kind of just jumped off their ability to get in already. So I was able to pretty easily get in there. And that was cool. And then, yeah, Kathy Olson was my manager at the Knox County Stormwater Management Department GIS group, where I got to be an intern there. During the semester, I was just going kind of part-time and just working on random maps and learning how to use ArcGIS quite a lot more than I had ever done. So that was like actually a really awesome experience. Getting to do that internship in particular, I learned a lot of like stuff that, you know, you don't necessarily learn in class just because it's not all kind of like set up for you. Like all the data is like very unorganized and everything's hard to get figured out. And so that's a little more like what the real world is. And like the classes, you know, kind of have everything a little more structured. So that was cool. I learned a lot there. And then, yeah, I did a little bit of undergraduate research for a couple classes. One of them was really cool. I was able to like talk my way into taking a like urban livability class that Dr. Foresta had put together, but it was for like graduate students. And I was able to get them to make an exception and let me take that class. And so I did a little bit of like a research in that class, doing like a survey of people in Fort Sanders, asking them more or less like, you know, where if they would walk through Fort Sanders in certain times a day, and like kind of gathering, you know, metrics on like male versus female or times a day, or like where you would and wouldn't go, certain streets you might not take, stuff like that. And that was pretty cool. And then I also did another undergraduate research project that I got to like kind of put up a poster for at the Eureka, I think it's called Eureka, thing that they do every year. So that it was just a project where I worked with Hudson Kelly actually on like just kind of discovering the like economic geography of like how people determine how they price parking in Fort Sanders for UT football games. Which was kind of interesting because like we always thought like, oh, it's just like some arbitrary number, and so we were kind of like trying to make a spatial a thing out of it, like, is it like how close you are to the stadium, it costs more? Is it if how close you are to a certain road makes it cost more? Whatever the case may be. So that was fun. And yeah, like you said, I did like I was like in club geography for a couple of years. And then on my senior year, I got to be the president, which was pretty cool. And that was a lot of fun. If you guys get a chance to do stuff with club geography, it's really cool. Like, you can kind of be involved in a lot of the events that go on. And we managed to talk Dr. Foresta into taking us on a trip to like Asheville and kind of show us around and let him talk to us about, or not Asheville, we went to Charleston actually, but just show us the town and explain like why things are the way they are. He'll talk your ear off. So yeah, it was awesome. I did a lot of cool undergraduate stuff. I don't know how I fit all the time in, but it was great.
No, this is awesome. And these are all good opportunities, and it's good to know that students are still taking advantage of those. We've still got folks working with the lab. We've still got folks involved with all sorts of different research. We've still got folks working with various folks at KUB, KGIS, various different groups with the city and the county. So that's all good stuff that's continued since you've graduated.
Nice.
Let's switch over here and let's let Adam ask his question. So Adam, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
So is there any male graduate students with dark hair and glasses who inspired you through your journey and brought you to where you are? I'm just kidding. It's nice to see you though.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, no, it was a lot. I mean, because I was like, involved with club geography a lot, I got to like just interact with the grad students, a lot more than you maybe would if you weren't participating in some organization. So yeah, I think that helped a lot to like see like what you guys kind of were working on. I did get to like go on some like little field trips, like coring trees for Megan's research. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, that was fun. And then like Hannah Gunderman was like kind of like a lot of the reason I think why I was able to like get my way into Oak Ridge, because I think she had been really involved with a lot of the people there. So she was able to like put me in contact with a lot of people I could talk to about getting into the internship program. So yeah, I think interacting with all the grad students was actually really helpful for me.
Yeah, well, you didn't mention my name explicitly, but we know you were going there.
Right.
But when Michael was saying, like extracurriculars and club geography, I mean, I was thinking Michael Hazelton literally did all of those things. So
yeah,
good representation for the department.
Well, what I'm really curious about, Adam, is he had all this interaction with these grad students, and yet he didn't go to grad school. So I don't know what kind of message we're sending to folks.
Yeah.
All right.
He didn't need it.
That's true. That's true. So Michael, you graduated in what, 2017? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. So we know now that you're with Apple. Before that, you were working as a contractor on work for Apple. Was the transition directly from being an undergrad to that contractor position, or was there something else along the way? And how did you get from Knoxville all the way out to California?
Yeah, it's actually kind of a funny story, I suppose. So my brother lives in Southern California, and I had like, I actually, whenever I was studying at UT, I guess, most of what I was interested in was like urban geography and like urban planning. And so I was actually, I got accepted to go to grad school at USC to study in the urban planning department. But then I got out there and like, I got some scholarships and kind of had like enough, I thought, to like, I was like, all right, I can do this. This is going to be tight, but sure, I'll go for it. Then I got out there and just, started kind of like interacting with the department and sort of just ran out of money, more or less. I was like, oh, well, this is actually not going to quite cover everything. And I can't really like work a lot. So anyways, I ended up deciding I'd put a pin in going to grad school for that. And I was like, I'll just kind of see what happens. And so at that point, I decided I'll just like get a job. I was like, well, I'll see what I can do for now with what I've got and see where that lands me. And so I mostly was actually applying for you know, a lot of jobs with like, you know, basic planning departments and stuff. But I also had like most of my experience was with GIS because of those internships. And so I was also applying for those. I was like, well, you know, I can do a lot of these things, so I'll just see where it gets me. And the funny thing is like in California, I guess there's just like a lot of GIS jobs going on because like, you know, Apple and Google and all these like self-driving car companies and Uber and all these guys are all like making maps. And so I had just put my resume and like what I did on Indeed, and there's a contractor company called Apex had actually called me, and they're like, hey, well, we have a job that, you know, we think you might be able to take. You seem like a fit for, and, you know, would you be interested? It's in San Jose. And I was like, I guess, yeah, I mean, that sounds cool. And so they had you do like a few rounds of interviews, and eventually they're like, well, so like this job will be like working on maps for Apple Maps. And they're like, are you interested? And I'm like, yeah. So they're like, all right, well, just move up here in like a couple weeks and we'll get you started. And so basically I didn't really have to do that much work to get the contractor job. Like it was sort of like just the recruiter saying, hey, we need help and you want to do it, then yeah. And yeah, so basically, you know, I pretty much landed that job like just by putting my resume online. And so yeah, I did that for a while. I started in like September of 2017, I think. So not too long after graduating. And then I ended up getting hired by Apple by July of 2018.
Less than a year as a contractor.
Pretty dope, right? But a lot of that was just sort of the circumstances of like they happened to be hiring at that moment, and I sort of was just in the right team at the right time, partially. So that helped. But I think a lot of it too was just I thought the job was cool. Like I was like working on Apple Maps. I asked a lot of questions all the time, and I was always bugging people, trying to figure out why I was doing things the way I was. And so within like Apex as like a contractor, I was like a small team lead on like editing features and stuff. So I guess, you know, just being interested in it sort of made me stand out maybe a little more. But because it is common, I noticed like a lot among like contractors is it's basically really easy to get that job. And it sort of felt like it felt in a way like being in college, but you're just working instead of going to class. Like it's just they hire a bunch of people at once and you all become buddies, and like it's sort of like a fun experience. But a lot of people also don't really take it very seriously. They're just like, well, whatever, I don't have to like show up, or I don't have to do anything, it doesn't really matter. So it's sort of also that like I think like I did actually care about it. So I think I was able to like, you know, stand out a little bit and also be there at the right time. So I think that helped me get into the position of actually getting hired by Apple.
And if I remember right, didn't you kind of also recruit a handful of UT students to come out to California and work with you?
Yeah, I kept pushing for people to come hang out with me. So they did. Apex was pretty regularly just like, hey, if you know people that know how to do this work, we're pretty much always hiring. So, you know, if you want to like, you know, send people some info, you know, let us know. And so, yeah, I think I got a couple people to come out there. There's a guy named like Tim Kane. I want to say a girl named Melanie or something. A few people ended up coming out. I didn't actually get to work with them too closely, but yeah, it was pretty cool. At least, you know, got some UT folks out there. You know, I think it's great experience if nothing else. So.
Yeah, no, I think and it's great to have those connections between current students and former students, and that way you all can keep each other informed on what sorts of opportunities are out there. So let me pause for a second. Dr. Wu's got his virtual hand up. So Dr. Wu, let me turn it over to you.
Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Hey, how's it going?
I have a question. So I'm a new faculty member here in the department, and I'm kind of a technical guy. I'm teaching programming. So I was wondering, like, what kind of desirable skills that right now, for example, if people want to look for a position similar to yours, what kind of programming languages or skills that would be desirable to apply for that position?
Yeah, totally. So my current position is in operations, and I know very little programming, which is like sort of maybe just unique to my team, where I mostly am just working with editor teams. But I think a lot of things I could use that I don't have is like just like querying languages like SQL. If people knew SQL, I think that helps a lot, because there's just like a lot of data to like just skim through, and it'd be really nice if I knew SQL. Like I feel like I'm always just bugging engineers to like do something for me that I feel like I should be able to do. So that would probably be one. And then I think a lot of people use Python a lot. Like Python seems to be like a common, coding language that if you know that, then I think you can like get pretty far just having that kind of experience.
Yeah, I'm the one right now teaching Python in the department. So I was hoping maybe to teach a little bit more advanced, because I only taught kind of intro level programming, but I think we can maybe have another course to introduce a little bit more advanced that people at the end they can apply to get into Google or Apple. I was really hoping that my students can also get into Google and Apple, so that I can.
Really good. Yeah, I would say, like having that kind of knowledge, there's way more engineers than there are like people like me just working in operations. So like having that kind of skill is super useful, I'm sure. Like I would go a long way.
The other question is Apple still, like Apple Map, the team still actively collecting data using the Street View car to collect the data? Or is it most the satellite or AI?
Right. Yeah, that's like there's always, they're always kind of, you'll see those cars driving around everywhere. They're kind of always doing that. And I'm imagining they're just always going to be doing that now. Kind of like Google Maps car, yeah.
Do they use ArcGIS there, or is it an enterprise program of some sort, or open source?
Yeah, most of it is like their own version of like a mapping software that they've just like created. I actually have never really used ArcGIS since I've been here. But I think some folks do use it here and there. I like play around with QGIS sometimes, but yeah, I haven't actually used ArcGIS at all since I've worked here.
I like to hear that.
For our non-GIS friends on the call, QGIS is one of the open source free alternatives to the commercial platforms that are out there for doing GIS work.
Yeah, I've messed around with QGIS a little bit. It's the new version is pretty nice.
Yeah, it seems it works for anything I've had to do. So, but yeah, I think if you start getting into like super advanced GIS work, it may not be the greatest software for that.
All right, Dr. Wu, I wasn't paying attention. Did you have another like follow-up question, or do I need to put your hand down?
Sorry, I didn't realize that I had to put my hands down.
There you go. I got it.
Okay.
All right. So before I switch gears, and we're actually going to pick Michael's brain about the things he can tell us about working for Apple, any other questions for Michael about sort of that transition from being a professional student to a professional geographer?
Maybe can I ask another question? So what do you like most working for Apple? And what do you like least working for Apple?
That's a tough question.
Remember, this is being recorded and we put it on YouTube when it's done.
That's right. I think what I like most working for Apple is the team I work with is like really a bunch of cool people. Like I get along really well with everybody that I work with. Like it's like a good environment in that like I feel like I can propose things or raise my ideas that I might have, even if I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like people will kind of consider it, or like basically it's like a very free space where you can sort of speak your mind, and no one's gonna like be like, well, you're an idiot for thinking that or something. Like it's sort of, and everyone sort of understands that like you don't know everything. So like because I work in ops And like, I talk to engineers all the time. The engineers know I don't have a clue how half the stuff they do works. And so, but they're like super cool about like me asking questions like, hey, can you do this thing? Or like, I can like ask, you know, them to do things for me, and like, they don't like get annoyed by me, or at least they don't seem to. And so like, I think that's my favorite thing, is just the fact that it's like a place where I feel like I can sort of like propose my ideas and like be involved in it and see where it goes, and like, you know, it's not like I just have to stick to my role and shut up, you know. It's like a very open place. What I like the least, I guess, is it is sort of easy to like just always think about work, because there's like a lot of work to do. And so like, it's easy, especially working from home all the time now, to just like work too long. Like, you can just like get wrapped up in it. And like, sometimes I like find myself like dreaming about stuff that I'm working on, and I hate that so much. So like, that's probably the worst thing, is just like, it's easy to let it overwhelm you. And that is hard to like avoid, just because there's just kind of so much going on and so many things that need to happen, that that's sort of like a challenging thing to do, on my end at least.
Thank you. I think we are kind of having kind of similar right now. It's difficult to distinguish from work and life if we work from home. So
Totally.
it's always mixed together. So sometimes I have to work during the midnight.
Yeah.
But it's always so when I was an undergraduate student, my dream was to either go to like top 3, NASA, Google, Apple. So and
nice.
that's what, but at the end I ended up doing faculty and in academia. But there's always something that I would love to see, because whenever we have some new technology coming out, and it's amazing that people in those big tech companies are changing the life of people. So
Yeah,
you're one part of the
one tiny
innovation.
piece of that. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and Michael, when we're done today, I'm actually going to ask you to stick around with Dolores and Alexis for a few minutes, because we got our GIS Day event that's coming up in the fall, and it's going to be virtual, and you're going to be one of the people I'm going to try and recruit to be part of our GIS Day event, and we'll fill you in on a couple of the details.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds cool.
All right, so let's take just a minute. Adam, go ahead. Sorry.
Michael Campanovo.
Where are you at, Nathan? Sorry.
What do you mean, where am I at?
Sorry, go ahead. I couldn't see you because I had Michael's screen pinned.
Oh, yeah, a similar kind of follow-up question to that I think might be useful information for some folks. From what I've seen, a lot of students who maybe just graduate are kind of intimidated, I guess, or something like that, or wary about looking for jobs in like high cost of living areas like Northern California. Can you speak a little bit about your experience with that, coming from a lower cost of living area like Tennessee?
Sure.
To
Yeah.
place where you just hear horror stories about how much a closet costs $3,000 a month or something.
Yeah, it's a lot more expensive. But like, so yeah, I mean, I guess whenever I came out here and started with Apex, I was making like $25 an hour, right? So like, it's enough to live on, but you're not like, super rich or anything. But like, so I was able to like get by. I lived in an apartment with a roommate, and that's sort of like just kind of the standard, like everyone does in that situation, is like, you're not going to get a 1-bedroom apartment by yourself. You're not going to get a studio even, probably, unless you're just spending every bit of your money on it. You're probably going to have like roommates and kind of maybe not live in the super nice places. And that sucks. I mean, I did know even people that like would like own like an RV and just live in that. That's actually kind of common out here. So, well, I don't know now, maybe not, but yeah, that was sort of, that is hard. Like it's not easy to like go from like paying like $400 a month in rent in the fort or something, or $5 or whatever, to like at least $1,000 for like a bedroom. So yeah, it's not easy. You kind of have to like go into it understanding that, you know, a decent amount of your money is probably going to go to rent. But that being said, like, it is pretty cool out here, like in a lot of ways. Like, you know, there's some pretty awesome stuff. Like I've been able to like, you know, go play in the mountains. There's like some awesome redwood forests real close by, and there's the beach, and just kind of a lot going on. Also, I will say, like, most of where I live in San Jose, which is actually one of the cheaper cities in the Bay Area. But like, if you want to live in a place like San Francisco, it's going to be real hard because it's even more expensive and kind of challenging to live like in the city itself. So yeah, it's kind of like a thing that sort of does suck about coming out here is it's a lot more expensive. So you make more money, but you sort of just spend it on rent.
Yeah, and you made it work, which is, I think, what.
Yeah, I made it work out. I mean, it's certainly
Yeah.
doable as long as you have a job. So, yeah. But yeah, it's definitely tough. That part does kind of suck.
Thank you, Nathan. That was a really good question. Adam, I think you had one other one you wanted to ask.
I didn't have a question. It just sounded like Dr. Wu wanted to send a resume.
Oh, yeah, I think we might all end up sending in resumes at the end.
Go for it. Be awesome if you're out here.
Well, Michael, can you tell us a little bit? I know Apple is, you know, pretty tight-lipped and secretive about the inner workings of the company, but kind of at a high level, can you give us a background of like how the Apple Maps team is broken out and sort of like just what you do? Because it sounds like you're doing some editing, but I'm sure there's some other stuff going on in there.
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that a little bit. So like, so it's a huge team. Like Maps is just massive. I don't know half the people on Maps even because it's just so many people doing so many things. But yeah, I mean, generally a lot of it is engineers, which I am not. So like a lot of them are just like people doing a lot of programming stuff, kind of putting together the map. But then there's like this piece where, you know, you need like people kind of building it more or less and confirming certain edits make sense. And then also there's like maintaining it. And that's sort of where my job lies is like mostly involving like managing projects that people are going to be editing the map for. So like we have like really large teams. Like there's like, you know, whenever I was a contractor, there was like over 100 of us just doing stuff. And then that's not even like all the teams. So there's like teams kind of all over the world. So that's kind of the main thing I do is I just like take projects that need to happen in a lot of cases and kind of just organize which people should do it and make sure they're on track. Make sure that like, you know, what they're doing is working. And then there's like, you know, lots of problems along the way. And so it's a lot of just like working with the engineering folks to help with like the tooling that we use and to make sure everything kind of like meshes properly. So I guess that's a super generic version of what I do. But yeah, unfortunately I can't like talk about like specifics like of like each project or, you know, stuff like that because they are pretty crazy about that stuff. They don't want leaks of any kind.
Sure. So overall, though, it sounds like your team is involved with a lot of the maybe cleaning up of data and editing of data and that sort of stuff.
Totally, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, and maybe you can't, I don't know, but right now during COVID, everybody's got weird hours. Everybody's got weird rules about it. Eat in, dine out, whatever it is. Is that something you all have been struggling with? Can you talk any about that? Because you know, that's all information that's typically associated with like a point of interest on a web map.
Yeah, so it is, I don't work that closely with like the points of interest, like keeping those organized, but I think it is a challenge because basically you need like somebody telling us that this is wrong. And so like most businesses aren't trying to do that. Like they're not like, oh, well, we're going to close early from here on out. They're not like reporting that to Maps to let us know. So I think that's a challenge, but it's not something I'm super involved with personally. They also did do like a project that I also wasn't that involved with, but they did some pretty interesting stuff pretty quickly, I thought, like to capture points of interest for like COVID testing sites. So like Maps is pretty reasonably reliable source for that now. Like took a lot of work to like identify all these like COVID testing sites, and then they called every single one of them and like vetted that this is where it is and like these are the hours. So like that was a pretty big undertaking, and that's sort of like, you know, hopefully still pretty accurate as long as those stay more or less the same. But yeah, and then working from home, obviously, like for the people who like the employees and stuff that are working from home, that's sort of also been like an interesting thing because like we're all working from home, and so like now we're all like having our own schedule, like we're all like kind of trying to figure it out, and mostly it just results in me being in meetings a lot more. But it's not so bad actually. I think we've actually managed to like roll out some pretty cool stuff, even though we're all working from home. So yeah, it's pretty neat. I don't know if you guys got a chance, but like I sent Michael like a link to like the WWDC video, and like there's like a section on Maps, and it talks about like adding cycling to Maps, like cycling routing. And that was like the main thing I've been working on for months. And I'm super stoked about it because I'm kind of like a big time cycling guy. I would rather everybody just not drive cars anymore and like switch over to bikes. So like I was pretty happy that I got to like get to influence that a little bit. So hopefully, you know, that'll be pretty good for people.
All right, I'm putting that link in there. And Michael says if you start at about the 20-minute mark, that's when the mapping part of the keynote starts up.
Yeah,
so,
pretty cool.
So Michael, and again, if you can't answer this, that's fine. So the bicycling part. So let's say that a bunch of UT students found out that you were working for Apple Maps, and they knew you were helping and do all this work with bike routes and that sort of stuff. Are there things that we can do to contribute to Apple Maps that makes your life easier or makes your data better, or whatever it is that you're working on?
There's not a lot you can do, I guess, per se. Like the main thing you can do is like report a problem if you have it. So like that actually gets like every one of those gets looked at, and like that gets integrated pretty quickly. But like aside from that, like if it's like before we've actually mapped it, like we're pretty much just trying to rely on our own sources. So like you probably wouldn't be able to do much from that. But like I think reporting problems is probably like your best bet. Hopefully someday we'll have like better integration between like users and collecting data, so that like we're a little more up to date, I think.
I had a question kind of related. So you mentioned your own sources. You all typically collect the data that you use yourselves, or do you use any other public sources like OpenStreetMaps or
yeah, so like it depends on what we're doing, I guess. So like I think some parts of the world, like Apple Maps is like partially reliant on OpenStreetMap data, but like most of like, so like the US is all like our own collected data, or at least purchased in some way. So yeah, that's basically how it works.
When I was in San Diego last year at the Ezra User Conference, it was in the morning, it was on the last day. I was getting coffee as I was walking over to the convention center, and there's a guy with a backpack with a LiDAR laser scanner on it, and he had an Apple logo on it. So I think he was working for you guys, walking around downtown San Diego, scanning everything from the ground level.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, those are exciting. There's some pretty interesting stuff coming out of that kind of thing.
So, Michael, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, and again, respond to what you can, and that's fine. So one of Apple's kind of selling points when they talk about the services that they provide is the fact that Apple takes your privacy really seriously, as opposed to some other companies that they're actually selling and making money off of things like your location information and that sort of stuff. Can you sort of talk to us a little bit about maybe like just Apple's attitude about that in general? Um, and just
Yeah.
that way people can make better informed decisions on which platforms they decide to use.
Totally. Yeah. So that's actually like one of the main things about Apple Maps that makes it kind of different is that they don't make any money off of Apple Maps. Like there's no selling of anyone's data. They're not like collecting anyone's data. In fact, they like kind of go out of their way to make it not accessible. So like if you generate a route or whatever, we don't collect any of that. Like in fact, we like scramble a bunch of the data. So like nobody working in Apple could ever even derive like who went where. Nobody could see like that this user lives here. Nobody could do anything with it. Like it's the only thing we know about anyone when this data is shared is that a user went somewhere. So like we have the ability to, like if somebody walked somewhere, we might know that a user walked in this particular section of road or something, but like we wouldn't ever know who it was or where they were going or any of that. Like it's just like a dot on the map is what it looks like to us. And so like that takes a lot of engineering effort actually just to like prevent people from collecting data. So like they're actually like spending money to like not keep users' data. So it's pretty cool. Like, there's no way Apple would ever like collect or sell or do anything with your data that you wouldn't want them to. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, that's sort of the difference, I guess. Whereas like, I think Google, the reason Maps exists for Google is just to like collect data and sell it to advertisers and whatnot. So yeah, it's kind of the difference.
Nice. So Dr. Wu really hit on my last one, which I was going to ask you a little bit about what you were looking for in candidates that work for you. And you kind of hit on that a little bit with the Python programming, a lot of the database stuff. Is there anything else you'd want to add to that? Like if a student wanted to kind of follow in your footsteps and get where you are, do they really have to go through the contractor route first? Could they just actually start at Apple, or like how does that process typically work?
Yeah, so with Apple, they do typically hire their contractors. I think it's just, well, it makes sense, right? Like they like already kind of know who you are and they've already interacted with you. So it's just like easier to like know what you're getting. So like most of the people that have been hired that I know have been a contractor at some point. So that seems like the usual process. I don't think that's always the case. I'm sure they're hiring people like directly out of college here and there, or they do have some internship programs if you're like more like of an engineer. But yeah, I would say like the main stuff is to just be pretty open about it and be very interested in like what they're doing. Like I don't know how to code like anything at all hardly. So like it's not a requirement, and you don't even really have to be like a super genius at working with GIS. It's sort of interesting in that Apple is sort of, they do everything a little bit differently. Like we're not using our GIS like Adam had said for the most part. So, I think a lot of it is just being like attentive and interested in like actually caring about what you're doing. And I think people will see that, and, just being organized and like, kind of like, these are all very generic skills, I guess, but like, I think those are the main ones, honestly, like just being like available, being organized, being like interested in what you're doing and showing that you actually care about what this is actually turning into is sort of the main thing that I think people notice and care about. And just being able to talk to people and be a good team player is sort of also a big thing, because this is like a huge organization. And so like you have to work with everyone, even if you're like the best maps guy in the whole world, you're still gonna have to work with people. So like that's sort of like the main stuff, I think. It's like, for at least my role, it's a little bit less about being super skilled in a particular tool of some kind or something, and more about like just collaboration and figuring things out together, and keeping an open mind, kind of, is sort of the main stuff, I would say. That's sort of like, if I'm not hiring anyone, I'm not like a hiring guy, but like I've sort of like pushed for contractors to get hired, and that's sort of like what I like to, like, for people to work with. as like people who are like going to be there when you need help and like kind of at least generally get what you're saying, and somebody who's, going to try to work with you, and not somebody that's just going to be a know-it-all about something, or, whatever the case may be. So.
And Mike, let me ask one more, because we're right at 4:15. So the contractor jobs, are those typically what are called like contingency positions, where they're like a term typically?
Yeah, basically they're like usually scheduled for like 1 year, at least with us. So it's like a 1-year contract, and then there's like some possibility of getting extensions on that contract, but there's like a maximum. I think like in California, you can't have more than like 18 months of contract time in one like series. So basically you get that amount of time and then you're kind of done, but you can come back later. It's all very strange. But like, I think like the contract thing is not a bad way to go if you're like trying to get into one of these like tech companies, because most of them hire from their contractor pool. And then also like, if they're going to hire at all. And then the other thing is like, I worked like with a ton of people when I was a contractor who didn't get hired, but they end up going somewhere else, because there's this like a lot of those jobs out here, like particularly in the Bay and some in like Los Angeles and stuff, where like pretty much I don't know anyone that I worked with as a contractor that's not employed now. Like they land somewhere. And I think having just the experience of working even as a contractor on maps is like good experience that looks good to like somebody, like it's like, oh, this guy worked on maps, that's pretty cool. So like I think that is sort of a big deal. Like, and I think that, there's like downsides to being a contractor. There's like, it's not permanent and you don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's a pretty nice step right out of college. Like you get paid an okay salary, you can like live on, and like you get experience, and usually like it's kind of like a stepping stone into something bigger for a lot of people. So I would go for it if that's where you're trying to go.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thanks. It's 4:17, and we asked for 45 minutes of your time.
Question?
Yeah, Dr. Wu, you get the last one.
So I was wondering, as a contractor, do you work specifically just for Apple, or you work for multiple companies?
So yeah, so you work technically for the contractor company, but the contractor company is like using this group for one particular entity. So like whenever I worked at Apex, I only worked on Apple Maps. That's like the only thing that I was allowed to work on or was used for. But yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
They
Thank
do
you
like
very much.
for a lot of other companies. So
I had just a quick tech question. Like for your work with Apple, do you work usually on an Apple computer, on OS X, I guess? And do they provide that?
Yeah. So when I was a contractor, they just give you like a computer at like the office that's like your station, and it is an Apple computer. And then now once I got hired by Apple, it was pretty dope actually. They like just point me to this website for the Apple site, and they're like, pick out whatever MacBook you want. So I got the best one. And so that's what I use now. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, everything's on Apple for Apple Maps. We don't use anything else.
Okay.
Makes sense.
All right. If y'all want to get in touch with Michael, he said he is happy to talk to y'all with follow-up questions. So in the chat, there's his LinkedIn information, his Facebook. He also uses that. He uses Slack for work. So if you were part of our our career coaching session this summer, you can reach him there. And then he still has somehow access to his Vol UTK email account. So I don't know how that happened, but he does check that like once a week, he said.
Yeah, something like that, around once a week.
Yeah. Everybody, thank you all so much.
Dolores, I think it's a new policy where they allow them to keep their email addresses afterwards. So
Okay.
I think it's a new policy.
You have to check it once a year.
Oh. I do that, so that's why I got it.
All right, there we go. And now we know. Thank you, Dolores. Michael, if you don't mind to stick around for just a minute, I'm going to pass you a little bit about GIS Day. I'm going to turn the recording off. Y'all are welcome to stick around and listen. But
Thank you, Michael. Take care.
thank you all for hanging out with us today.
Thank
Cool.
you,
Yeah,
Mike.
thanks, guys. Been fun.